right, MMA Today for tomorrow. We're going to start today with some big news coming out of Pro Fight League. I don't know if it's big news, little news, tiny news. I don't know. John Fitch, who is a prominent name, I guess, in the world of mixed martial arts back like 10 years ago, but I guess some people think he's still a big deal. He's in talks with Bellator, which means that Pro Fight League must have some problems. Now, what I want to get into is, what does this mean about Pro Fight League? Because they've been on hold for what? I don't know how long. How long have they been on hold, Tone?
Since, what was that, their last event was in December of last year?
Yeah, but that wasn't even really a Pro Fight League event, was it?
It was, they did it at like the racetrack or whatever. It started raining. It was a very odd thing.
There was only 4 fights too.
I think it was 4 fights, but they got like some of the bigger names. Like, I don't remember.
That's a problem when you don't remember or anybody remembers what happened on that fight card.
Yeah, and some of these guys, I mean, obviously the details for the contracts are very vague, but like I know Fitch came out and said that he became a free agent, the day of like February 2nd or whatever. So obviously there's some kind of like expiring contracts going on. Same thing with Kayla Harrison, or is that her name? The judo prospect, big time prospect. The PFL signed. Apparently, her contract's done with the PFL as well. So,
what other fighters are on that roster that's noteworthy? I guess.
Right now, they only have 3 champions left, and that's Andre Harrison at 145 pounds, Bekbulat Magomedov at bantamweight, 135 pounds, and then Blagoy Ivanov's their heavyweight champion.
The good thing for them, at least, that those 3 names that Max just said are all very legit guys.
But there's other guys, right, that are like right up there with those champions that are fighting for them, correct?
Is there?
I don't know. There's Lance Palmer. Isn't he part of that organization right now?
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna run low on names very quickly though if you try to run through them.
That's the only name that I can think of.
Steven Seiler comes to mind. I know he was on, I think, the last fight card they had. But
I'm not sure who's like Firmino, I would say, but I think last time I saw him, he was an ACB or something.
Right? Isn't
too.
Jake Shields is signed by them, right?
As far as we know right now, Jake Shields is still with the PFL. Yeah.
And Paul Harris.
Yeah.
Is Paul Harris part of PFL?
I don't. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is just we're not sure who's. I guess we'll figure out when they first start up their fights in June, which is still 4 months from now.
Yeah. So now with John Fitch talking about that he's negotiating with Bellator, what does that mean for the other fighters? Are they going to start negotiating with Bellator? Are they going to start negotiating with the UFC?
Well, no. It's because Fitch's contract was up. He said, I became a free agent on February 2nd. There's some kind of, I don't think it's like a free-for-all where all these guys are suddenly free agents. Like some of them have expiring deals or working out buyouts or whatever. They're not all just free agents, though.
Hey, Max, did Bellator offer John Fitch the initial contract of $250 or what? Do you know anything about that?
Man, it's certainly a big-time controversial post going around about that local prelim fighter posting his $250 payday for a Bellator undercard on a date that does not have an event scheduled. Tony, you got anything more you want to add to that controversial post going around?
I'm trying to look into it and figure out as much as I can. The only thing I know is that as of right now, there's not like a scheduled event, at least in the screenshot of that contract, which is March 3rd in Atlanta, Georgia. There's not an event scheduled for there. That's actually the day after a big event, Bellator 195. So, yeah, I don't know. I would think that Fitch is going to get, work out a pretty good deal for himself, even if his style is not what people, tune in to watch. There's no denying, he's still very talented. I think it just bolsters a division within what the Bellator has already established, as, on par with the UFC, or maybe, has an argument, at least at the top, with Rory having a win over the UFC champion. That's a little bit better. But, I mean, the the $250 guy was amateur, never fought pro. And that seems to be like who Bellator wants to fill their cards out with. But I think they might have to rethink that at some point, because, it's just a bad look when you have all these really low end talent fighting on your prelims, and they're not getting paid anything.
Well, in regards to Fish, that's a good pickup for Bellator. He's been around the game for quite some time, obviously a long-time UFC veteran. But he has won 4 straight, and he has won 6 of 7, that one loss coming to Usman Pahares in the now defunct World Series of Fighting. But like Tone said, that's a guy whose name will carry him through and do somewhat of a draw in that division with a lot of guys who have names. And there are some matchups of some true veterans, whether it's Lorenz Larkin, Paul Daly, Rory McDonald, that do offer a pretty intriguing matchup when it comes to John Fitch, because he still is pretty talented. He's not the same fighter he was in 2011, but Fitch definitely can bring some new opportunities to that Bellator welterweight division.
Could he become the Takanori Gomi of the Bellator welterweight division? Is that what you're saying to me?
I'm not going to write it off, man. He's been in quite a few battles in his day, and as has Gomi. So we've seen that happen time and time again with veteran fighters like that. But on the trend he's at now, I wouldn't say he's quite at that level yet.
Yeah, he's a good fighter, but he's always, in my mind, he's always going to be known as the guy that was talking all this shit about the people that use steroids, and then eventually he got busted for steroids. That's what I remember John Fitch as. And
did he get busted for steroids, or was it a diuretic?
I don't know. Now you put some doubt in my mind that if it's steroids or not, or is it a diuretic? I thought it was steroids.
I don't know. What I'll always remember him for is for basically popularizing lay and pray. That was when like the phrase lay and pray became like super fucking popular, when John Fitch was out here like just boring us all to death and beating like everyone the UFC put in front of him. And everybody was like, lay and pray this guy's a fucking lay and pray like style. And they started referring to like other people, like any kind of wrestler was now like lay and pray.
And then he faced the king of lay and pray and got dropped by him.
the only guy who's allowed to do lay and pray.
Yeah, everybody loves his lay and pray, but if John Fitch does it, they hate it. It's kind of fucked up for John Fitch. Also, John Fitch is known for the launch of Johnny Hendricks too, if you think about it. When Johnny Hendricks was coming up, I think the first knockout was John Fitch, was it?
He had a couple of smaller ones. He knocked out Ricardo Funch and Amir Sadala, but that was the big, first big name he really put to sleep.
Yeah, because John Fitch was not known. He wasn't easy to knock out around that time. So, but there's Jake Shields. I think that PFL, in my opinion, they're probably not going to even have an event. And what's going to happen is these fighters are probably going to have to jump off the ship and join, other organizations. And I could see like a Jake Shields going to Bellator or even going to Japan or something. Maybe he'll just be a free agent and just hop around the globe, because
submission grappling too.
Yeah, and he's grappling all the time. There's big money in grappling. ACB.
How much?
ACB pays pretty good from what I heard.
Well, but what about like the submission? I mean, are you getting $250 from Submission Underground or whatever?
I don't know about Submission Underground, but I heard the ACB JJ, those guys are signing exclusive contracts for 2 years, and they get paid pretty good for the.
Who do they have? Like what marquee names do they have?
They have all the names in their last event. If you look at it, they had all the big names out there fighting for them. So
Like who?
in Brazil,
The Meow brothers.
the Meow brothers, like all the heavyweights. Come on, man, you're talking about BJJ. We're like, I'm just saying. Hey, I just had Josh Hinger on the podcast, my podcast, and he was breaking down like, compared to like ADCC and stuff like that, you can't beat the money that ACB is giving out to these grapplers for their events. That's what he was saying, and he's 2-time world champion. So, and he has an exclusive deal with ACB. From what I say, right? So Jake Shields could go over there, man. He's a big name. He could actually build up ACB a little bit, better than what they've been going on with their jiu-jitsu stuff. But anyways, now moving on to Pro Fight League. What do you think is their end result? Are they going to have an event in June? Max, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think it's probably 50-50 at this point. It seems like they keep running into issues left and right, whether it's legal issues, whether it's, whether they have these fighters under contract or not, whether they have a date and a venue for an event, whether they have a TV broadcast. It seems like there's a lot up in the air right now. Should they have an event? I think it does. They probably start it, and stack the deck with a lot of their roster early on. But it just doesn't seem like the folks running this organization really have kind of long-term sustainability in their minds.
Do you think it's going to be something that, will just fizzle? And they always were going to fizzle? It was just like they're just hyping up nothing, Tone?
I mean, it's not like they don't have – they didn't have talent on their roster. But, I mean, as of right now, even if they were to get up and running, would they be competitive with the UFC and Bellator in the United States? There's no way. There's no way. Like, right now you got, like, UFC is, like, top dog, and then Bellator kind of as, like, a 1B or whatever you want to call it, step below them. And then, you got your regional type stuff. But where does PFL like fit in there when they're already like leaking fighters and don't really have a TV deal, a real TV deal at least? I mean, you're so far behind the game at this point. The reason Bellator has been successful is because they're partnered with, a major channel in what used to be Spike and now Paramount Television, and backed by Viacom, which has, billions of dollars. So unless you have that kind of backing and that kind of, those resources, you're not breaking into the U.S. scene, at least stateside here. I mean, there's more opportunities overseas, but I feel like we've gotten to the point now where it's you got the NFL and what was it back in the day, like the NFL and the AFL or whatever. I don't even remember what they used to be called.
XFL?
No, not the XFL. The old timey when they wore like leather helmets or no helmets at all, and like it was two different leagues, like before.
Yeah, it was the AFL. AFL versus
the AFL and the NFL. Yeah. So we're at that point now where you have like two giant organizations, and like everybody else is just gonna get fucking crushed if they tried.
So do you think the same thing's gonna happen, like the AFL NFL thing, where AFL is gonna fold, which is Bellator, and all those fighters will end up in the UFC? It'll never happen.
That wouldn't happen. Not with the back. I mean, like I just said. I mean, with all the backing they have, the money, and Scott Coker, Dana White, it's just nah.
Yeah, it seems like Bellator's like they're getting into certain areas around the globe too. Like they for some reason they're in the Middle East often, like a couple times a year. They're going to Italy a lot, right?
Yeah,
Um,
they go to Italy a lot, which is something they go to places. They basically target places that the UFC doesn't go to. That's what they do.
Next thing you know, they're gonna be in Mongolia or some shit,
Yeah, and
right?
you notice they never go to like Brazil or some of the like popular foreign UFC destinations.
Yeah, I think the UFC got Brazil on lockdown. Like it's just ridiculous down there. Most likely.
Speaking of
Brazil?
the Belem, Belem,
Yes.
Belem,
Belem.
Belem.
Hey, I saw a interesting like I think on social media I saw Joe Soto, right? He wrote that, he just fought recently on Belem and he was saying that when he went down there and he was there for a couple of days, he just realized how fortunate he was to be an American citizen. What do you think
He's
that
all
means?
just he's just shitting on Brazil.
In a
uh,
nice way? Is that what he's doing?
I, I I don't know how else to take. I mean, when you visit somewhere really nice, you're not like, oh, this just reminds me like, you don't go visit like Rome in Italy and be like, this place just reminded me how great the United States is, and I'm proud to be an American afterwards.
Yeah, that's kind of shitty to say, right? Like backhanded, what is that, a backhanded compliment or whatever you call it? But yeah, let's move on to UFC Fight Night 125, Machida versus Anders. The Karate Kid versus the NFL Fallout or Dropout or whatever you want to call it. All right, now the main event was Machida versus Anders. And what did you guys think about this split decision? What did you guys think about the fight overall? Did Anders beat Machida? Did Machida just did did he do was his game plan just to do enough to win because he didn't win? He hasn't won, a fight in so long. What do you think? Let's start with you, Tone.
I mean, I would have been okay with like a draw. I scored it for Anders, but I mean, I said at the time when I scored it that I would have no problem with anyone giving it to Machida. It was just such a close fight. Obviously, I think Anders did more damage, but the pure strikes just added up in Machida's favor. I think the guy is basically a counter striker. And not just like he used to be a power counter striker, and now his hands have like no power whatsoever because he was throwing combos out there, with his hands, and Anders was just eating them up, and they weren't phasing him at all. But where he was getting them was with the kicks. The kicks, Anders really just had no idea what to do with them, and I think that's what won, if you want to view it like that, even though it could have been a draw, won Machida the fight. Obviously, even with the win, Machida doesn't look great here. You can tell that he's not going to be going out there and beating anybody in the top rankings at middleweight or anything. So I mean, yeah, that's because that we know where Machida's at. We know Anders needs a little bit more work. His cardio didn't really hold up over the 5 rounds, I don't think, as well as some people thought. Since he was a linebacker for Alabama, as people like to say. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a problem with the decision at all. If to bring it all back, it is what it is. Very close
Max,
fight.
Max, uh did you see anything being exposed with Anders' performance?
What I thought about Eric Anders is he really did not imply his killer instinct that we've seen him have on the regional circuit. What we know with Machida is his last 3 outings, he's been hit, and when he's been hit, he's gone down. And Anders has shown, he's got tremendous power. Like Tone mentioned, though, he was having issues with the kicks and the distance, and probably was a little hesitant with the counter striking. But Anders, I thought he really should have been more aggressive, and he really should have went for it in the striking department. He did land multiple times, and definitely, like Tone said, probably outlanded Machida. But there were definitely times where he'd hit him and immediately try to clinch up and look for the takedown instead of trying to put combinations together and put Machida away. But that's, probably something that's part of the learning experience. It was his first professional loss, his first main event in the UFC. So expect Anders to come back and learn from this.
Yeah, I see a more of an upside for Anders, right? This was his first loss. He faced Machida, who is a big name. It's not something that you could, it's not something that you would be like, oh my God, I'm depressed because I lost to Machida. Well, some people would, but it's not, right? He's a former champ. He's a big name. Where does this fight, Machida called out Bisping. Bisping says he wants to fight Machida. Anders, where does Anders go? Let's start with Machida. Where does he go? Does he take on Bisping? And whoever wins that fight, they continue their career, or whoever wins that fight or loses that fight, it doesn't matter. They should just both retire because they're just on their last leg, or not even the last leg, on their last toe, right? We'll start with you, Max.
Yeah, a fight with Bisping certainly makes sense. I mean, both guys aren't going to be contending for the title. I think that's pretty evident. And I believe this fight was once supposed to be booked in London, and it ended up being Machida taking on Mark Munoz, I believe. So it makes sense from a veteran fighting a veteran with a big name standpoint. And as far as retirement goes, I don't know if I've ever heard any sort of retirement talks coming from Machida's camp. Certainly there's a lot of talk that Bisping's next fight will be his retirement, and rightfully so. But that'd be something if both guys did end up squaring off in the main event of a fight card, and both ended up making it their retirement fight.
What about Anders, though? Where do you think he goes from this? Who would be a good opponent for him?
So, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities in the middleweight division. A guy that comes to mind, maybe a guy like Ryan James, recently victorious, or Andrew Sanchez, the guy that he beat, former Ultimate Fighter winner, just to see Anders, put up, again, a little bit different test, but just see how he answers back, how he battles back from, this first professional loss. Definitely somebody outside the rankings, and definitely someone that has a little bit more well-rounded of a game than a Lyoto Machida striker.
What about you, Tone? What do you think? Where does this take Anders, this loss?
I think it makes him, a better fighter. He's going to need to reevaluate some things, work on some things. Honestly, I think he should fight. I don't have a specific name in mind, but I think he should fight, another counter striker. I just want to see, how he deals with that, how he game plans for that, because it just didn't seem like he handled Machida very well. And I just want to kind of not run that specific fight back, but just see him versus, another counter striker to see how he deals with that. And as far as the Machida Bisping fight, I would totally on board with that. I know some people would argue that they each deserve their own fight versus, somebody else. But, I mean, honestly, it's probably better for these old guys to fight each other instead of fighting, either some young up-and-comer, like we saw with Brad Pickett. I forgot who he's fighting, but
Vera, I think.
Huh?
Vera? Marlon
Vera.
Marlon Vera, yeah, it's Cheeto Vera. So, yeah, I think it's better for these old guys to face each other. At least they go out on a loss, to someone of note rather than, getting beat up by someone half your age. And like, I mean, they're two legends of the sport that have never fought each other. So it's just kind of, it's a good way to go out where you have two guys, big names, and have yet to face each other.
Yeah, I think the fight nights, they should have fight nights where they have these legends face off in the main event and then stack the main card with up and coming guys. So eyes will come to that, fight card just because of the names that are on it in the main event. Lyoto Machida, Bisping, I have no problems with that. Even Lyoto Machida, rubber match versus Shogun would be, somewhat intriguing right there. They're 1-1, right? Even Anders versus Shogun would be very intriguing. Why not, right? Shogun is 205.
Different weight class, but
yeah, different weight class. But Machida could go up to 205.
Yeah.
I mean, Machida used to fight at 205. At the matchup you had of Shogun versus Anders, though, had me cringing because I just that doesn't seem like it would end very well for Anders.
Really? You think so?
No, I mean Shogun's still. I mean, he's a big guy, very crafty, powerful striker. I don't know. Considering how we just saw Anders do versus Machida, not sure that would turn out very well for him.
All right, moving on. Like the big controversy was the co-main event of this show, of Shevchenko getting the rear naked choke in the second round against Priscilla Chacharona. I think that's how you say it.
That's not how you say it.
But anyways, a lot of people, they're complaining afterwards that this matchup was such a huge mismatch, that why did the Brazilian commission allow this to happen, and blah, 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 and all these people are talking shit. And the biggest issue was, on top of that, Mario Yamasaki, Mr. I Heart You, Mr. If he dies, he dies. If she dies, she dies, right? And then now he's actually talking back to people and saying, like, whatever he said to Dana White, and you know how all that happens. But
warrior spirit.
Yeah, in your eyes, like a lot of fighters have come out and said, like, I don't want my corner to stop it. I don't want, the ref to stop it. Only way they should stop the fight is if I'm unconscious, or what was the other thing? I forgot what they said, but something like that, unconscious or submit it or tap out, right? In your eyes, do you think this fight went too long, Tone?
I mean, I think the problem starts way before they even get to the ring. Like those of us who watch tape, every week for like kind of like studying up on who's going to be on the cards. I mean, I found some footage of Cachoeira. I hope I'm saying that right. And like just like some of her fights on regionals in Brazil, and like instantly knew that this was just going to be a fucking slaughter. I think it would have been even worse if Shevchenko hadn't taken her down. I feel like that was almost like mercy. Because, I mean, her style standing up was just such a mismatch for a counter striker like Shevchenko. So, yeah, like those of us who watched tape, knew this was going to happen. The UFC probably knew this was going to happen. Shevchenko started the week as a minus 700 favorite, opened as minus 700 favorite, and ballooned all the way up to minus 1,000, which you just never hear of in MMA. You hear that like sometimes boxing, but not MMA. And that's, I think they're just indicative of like the matchmaking here. And I think the whole thing just kind of, at least for those, maybe for those who aren't like as involved as us, might have looked at a performance and been like, wow, like such a dominant, display, and such a like a ferocious fighter or whatever. But at least for me, I was like, you just beat some, nobody. Not to be mean to her, but like, you just beat some nobody, and you did. There's not even a highlight or anything, because I mean, you're just gonna show highlights of her like beating on her head for mount, like. It wasn't even like a head. I think the UFC was hoping there'd be some flashy knockout or something. And you didn't even get that. And then you get into, the ref. Obviously, I don't know what the fuck he was doing. Just looking at her as she was getting struck in the head. And then the third party at fault here is honestly the corner, because she comes over in the middle of the round, in between rounds, and tells them she's fucking hurt, and they just say to, so what, basically. And I think it's just something's gonna have to change in MMA corners, where they start taking better care of their fighters. Like, a thing that jumps to my mind is Greg Jackson telling Donald Cerrone that he's still going to go out there and win the second round or whatever after Masvidal like knocked him out twice at the end of the first round, and for some reason that fight wasn't stopped. And that's just a thing that's going to have to change at some point. They're going to have to go more towards the boxing model, the corner throwing in the towel. And I think one of the ways to move that along is to do away with the win bonus, which I've never been a fan of anyway.
Max, do you think Shevchenko underperformed in this matchup because she was such a favorite?
Absolutely not. I actually think, all the talk about the mismatch and, the controversy with the no stoppage and not even seeing the tap on the rear naked choke completely undermined how clean her striking did look. And yes, she was going against a far less experienced opponent, but she really came out and made an emphatic statement, especially coming off that tough loss at bantamweight to Amanda Nunes. I think there's a lot to be said about her performance and how dominant it was. And this was the first time we really saw her with, pressing the action, moving forward with really strong offense. I think that's something that cost her in those Nunes fights, is being a little bit more passive. And to me, I think Shevchenko is undoubtedly the next challenger for Nico Montano's flyweight title.
Yeah, Shevchenko, she, this was kind of like a tune-up fight if you ever have one in the UFC. This was definitely the definition of that.
I think that's being nice.
Yeah, it is being nice.
Those squash match.
And also in the first round, you noticed Priscilla hurting her knee. Did you see that during the fight in the first round?
Honestly, I did not notice that. I didn't even know that had happened until after the fight was over.
No, I noticed it during the fight when in like one of the striking exchanges, she hopped back and she was like limber on one of her legs. And I was like, oh shit, looked like she hurt her knee.
That's something the corner should figure out, isn't it?
I think that's what she was saying to the corner in in Portuguese, that something was wrong after the first round, right? But then, like you said, the corner was like, they didn't even hear her. They were just like, hey, you better go out there and win this shit because, you're my fighter, or whatever the fuck he said to her.
How like, what is it, like 50 grands on the line if they win?
I don't know.
Maybe she got a little bit more because she's on the co-main event, but I mean, I think it's the show win model, or win show win model. So like if they win, getting that extra money, that's a big factor.
Another interesting thing is that Shevchenko, right? She is a bona fide striker, like legit, but she's been winning with submissions. That's what's kind of a weird thing to me, is like, has she changed her style to where it's like, hey, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to strike, but then that's going to lead to me taking it to the ground every single time and trying to submit these girls. What do you think about that, strategy that she had? Because it was, to me, I was kind of shocked a little bit that she went for those takedowns. I thought she was going to stand and just kind of pick her apart. What do you think about that situation with her going and taking it to the ground every single round? Max?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but just look how dominant she was from top position, landing ground and pound. It could be just a matter of implementing new tools in the toolbox, or if it's just something she saw in the footage of Cachoeira's game. But I wouldn't look too deep into it. And it could also be, you know, a tactic to show the rest of the division, you know, she's not just a counter striker.
For sure. Now, there was a lot of fights on this card. I'm just going to say it right now. Not worth rewatching at all. A lot of fights, right? But there's a few that were pretty good. You know, like not breakout performances, but well, actually one breakout performance was the performance by Aliania Viana, which is the next hottie out of Brazil, right? That's what they're – even Dana White was, you know, like posted some shit about her. He posted nothing about anybody else but her buried deep in the prelims, and he posted a picture that says great performance to her. What do you guys think about her? She's pretty legit, though, don't you think?
Yeah, she fought.
Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, she fought Maya Stevenson, who's primarily a striker, although she's married to Joe Stevenson, so you expect her to be a little bit more diverse with her grappling. Viana showcased very smooth Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials, transitioning from position to position, you know, pretty much climbing over the top from back to snatch up an armbar. Very impressed with that. I'd like to see her against someone with a little bit more established MMA grappling in her next fight, but definitely a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, when I was watching tape for this fight, I was very impressed with her. You know, mainly I think she mainly fought in the Jungle Fights promotion, where she was the champion. But I'd like to see her. I mean, with her, you know, height, like she's pretty tall, and lengthy and whatnot. I'd like to see her at flyweight, and just see what, because I mean, I don't know. I think there's just an opportunity there right now that's where strawweight's a little more backed up.
I think Viana, she's good, but a good fight for her would be against Nadia Kassem. I think that would be a good matchup in the next, you know, their next fights. They both have, you know, now they both have some experience in UFC. Why not put them together? You know, put them. They could probably even main event a fight night someday. I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's a good matchup. In both, you know, having fought at strawweight and flyweight in their careers. The only thing with that matchup is both competitors are pretty young, and while it's not unheard of to see those really young up and comers get pinned together in a shallower division, especially the women's strawweight or women's flyweight, maybe having them to kind of climb the ranks by fighting some that are, I guess, not necessarily more established, but more experienced.
Now, the other big fight, well, the most violent fight of the card was the Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith. We all knew this. We talked about this last week. It lived up to the hype, right? Yeah. But who did not live up to the hype was Anthony Smith after he talked all that shit about all the middleweights, and then he went in there and he fought his heart out, man, no doubt. He took hard shots. But we discussed it last week. Thiago is just way more powerful, right? And he just took out Smith with ease. What do you? Who would you match up?
He's already been matched up versus David Branch.
Thiago Santos?
Yep. They already gave him a matchup versus David Branch. I'm really excited because I actually, as soon as that fight was over, and I think he didn't call anybody out, but he was like, "Give me somebody really high up," or I don't remember what he said. And I tweeted out, you know, Thiago Santos for David Branch, make it happen. And then they announced today that is happening. In fact, on was that March 21st? No, April 21st. So I'm really excited for that. And that was just a great fight. Like I just knew that was going to be the result. You know, if it was going to be a slugfest, Thiago Santos is coming out the winner in that style of fight. But Smith just showed so much fucking heart. Like a lesser fighter would have been finished in that first round, but he really gutted it out.
Max, what do you think? Where does Smith go from here? And with this loss, with this violent finish, Who do you think would be a good matchup to kind of bring him back into the winner's circle, or maybe just, just a good matchup?
There's quite a bit of names in the middleweight division. Two that come to mind are both Omar Akhmedov and Marvin Vettori, who are off that split at UFC. Was it 219 in December? Both guys pretty action-packed. Not afraid to go to the distance, but also to mix it up both on the feet and on the mat. And Anthony Smith, don't take anything away from him. Like Tone said, a lot of guys would have been finished a lot quicker than he was. And I'd like to see him get back in there and look to continue that momentum, because he really seemed like he was coming into his own before this fight.
I feel like Thiago Santos is having like a career, like a second wind almost, after that just brutal upset versus Spice Lee. He's reeled off 4 straight wins. He's getting a highly ranked opponent in Dave Branch. Like, he gets that win, in a couple months, and he's right back into that title picture. Like, that's pretty cool to see.
It is.
It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe, especially considering he fought at 170 pounds in the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 2 and had a pretty uneventful split decision win, and then had 2 decision losses on the show. Just to see how far he's come.
He's a beast, man. I could see him taking out Branch and then actually really fighting a legit top 5 guy after that. Branch is good, but I don't know. Santos, he's riding a wave right now that it's going to be hard to stop with that power that he has. And his striking just looks like it's getting better and better also. It's pretty amazing. It's always good to see a fighter hit their second win, like a Matt Brown. Remember Matt Brown was, up and down for a while, and then he hit that second win and won 9 in a row, 8 in a row. And I think Santos could probably be on that same streak himself. So another guy that stood out with me was on this card was Tim Means, because, man, he fell off. He's falling off constantly. Ever since that supplement slip-up thing that he had, he hasn't been doing very well in the UFC. What do you guys think about his performance against Sergio Moraes, which is a jiu-jitsu guy, but they stood and traded, and Tim just couldn't beat him, What do you think, Max?
Yeah, Tim Means, he really seemed like he was going to cruise into the rankings and had arguably a favorable matchup against Cowboy Cerrone before that USADA incident. Now dropped 3 in a row. And another interesting thing is he just re-signed for 4 more fights prior to this fight. Mm-hmm. So another kind of underlying theme here of UFC Belem, of fighters fighting out their contracts. Timothy Johnson and Joe Soto, both these were the last fights in their contract. And John Dodson was actually slated to fight out his contract prior to Pedro Munoz missing weight. But overall, getting back to Means, yeah, he just seems like he's lost a step, and I can't quite put my finger on where it is. But he seems like he's getting hit a lot more than he was before, and just doesn't appear to have that really clean, precise, accurate striking that we really saw him go on that tear prior to getting that main event slot against Cowboy Cerrone.
I don't know. I'm gonna catch some flack for this, but I've never gotten the appeal of the Dirty Bird. I never really got on that train. But I could see why people like him. Throwing the elbows and the kind of the style he fights. But man, I don't know. That fight could have gone either way, right? With Sergio Moraes. I think a lot of people scored that for Tim Means. And Sergio Moraes just cracks me up. His striking is if he was to go into my where I do my Muay Thai and whatnot, my coaches would just, if I was to emulate him at the gym, my coaches would slap the shit out of me. They'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's a wild man. That was I don't know, fun fight though.
Yeah, there was a few guys that missed weight here, right? There was Munoz, and then there was Prazeres, which he missed weight by a large margin. And there was that whole situation of like, if on that day, if he's 175 pounds or something like that, that Des Green would not fight him. But then when they weighed him, he was above that, and then Des Green still took the fight. Props to Des Green, but come on, I don't know, man. It's just that's a mess up situation for Des Green, because if he doesn't fight, he doesn't get paid. And you see what happened to John Dodson. He went down there, weighed in. His opponent didn't make weight, and he denied the fight. And the UFC.
Are we going to talk about hot water gate though?
Yeah, what's up with that hot water gate thing too? Let's break that down, Tone.
I mean, they're in Brazil. Joe Soto said some things that I won't repeat, but I mean, you could reference what he said. And basically, the hotel where the fighters were staying at, which you figure would be, a nice hotel, did not have running hot water. And that might kind of sound like a joke to some people, like, oh, they can't survive without hot water. But it's very important for guys cutting weight. If integral part of cutting weight is soaking in the hot water, and there's just a whole process and whatnot that they have to go through. And without that, it just makes everything a lot harder. Doesn't excuse the fact, that guys were missing weight, especially Brazeres, because it was so much weight. But guys like Anders, who were able to reweigh in and make the weight. And honestly, Munoz missed by not very much, and Dodson turned it down. I'm not faulting Dodson at all, but I mean, you kind of, if you're not going to take the catch weight, UFC's kind of made it clear, we're not gonna like bend over backwards trying to help you or anything.
Yeah, it sucks for the people that go down there and make weight. And it's not even like the foreigners are missing weight. It's the Brazilians that are missing weight. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like the guys go down there prepared. They're flying down there, and then they miss weight. It's just messed up for them.
Outside of Anders is coming from the States.
For sure. What? Anders is Brazilian too?
No, I said he's coming from the States. I said besides Anders.
Oh, okay. Now, other than that, there was not much else on this fight card. If you give an overall like assessment of this card, do you think that this card was shitty? Max, what do you believe?
It definitely wasn't the most entertaining card that we've seen recently. There was quite a few decisions on the card. Not that necessarily means it's a boring card by any means. Some good finishes on the card for sure. Pauliano Viana, Thiago Santos early in the night, Yuri Alcantara, Davison Figueiredo, back-to-back wins for the Alcantara brothers training camp there. Overall, though, maybe about a 6 out of 10, 5.5 to about a 6 out of 10.
What do you think, Tone?
I was like really high on this card coming into it, and then on fight night, it just kind of like fizzled out a little bit. Like early on, like Max said, it was killer, and then it seemed like once we got into the main card, started being some decisions, and it just kind of started dragging a little. And then you get that that much beloved Fox pacing as well mixed in, just to fuck with everyone. And that, I don't know, that just doesn't make for a good night. But I think all things considered, I came in very high. It didn't quite meet my expectations, but I'd give it, like a 7 out of 10 or something.
I think that if you're not Brazilian, you should probably not go down to Brazil and fight. You know what I mean? Because if you look at the percentage of like Brazilians winning fights in Brazil against foreigners, It is ridiculous. Especially, and this part shows you this.
I thought it was funny though, because people on Twitter were like, "The Brazilian judges are at it again. It's the Brazilians," and it was the two fucking American judges that were screwing up all the decisions.
Yeah.
And the Brazilian judge was going and scoring for like the Americans. I was like, God, it's just, I mean, it's such a narrative that Brazilian judges or whatever, but like it was the fucking American guys that were screwing everything up.
Maybe some Brazilians were like in the background. Whenever they looked over their shoulder, they were in the background with little looks like you better have some good scores on your paper. Or we're gonna catch you outside, like that style. Like the Philadelphia Eagles fans. You know what I mean?
Philadelphia Eagles, yeah, Super Bowl champ Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, what's up with all that? What's up with Philadelphia? What's up with Americans when they win some, championship? They want to go destroy their own city. Why is that happening? Man. Where does that come from? Is it genetic? Come on, Americans, explain to me this.
I heard of this Max. Oh yeah, Max. Were you a Rams fan? He probably doesn't like the NFL anymore.
Yeah, I don't pay too close attention to it anymore. But that's always been Philadelphia sports fans in general. They've always been pretty loudmouth, hard hitting.
Batteries at Santa.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
it's just Philadelphia, though. I think
John's right, because like when the Lakers won the finals back in 2000, I remember watching like as a kid, like seeing the news and like cars were on fire and shit, and like LA was rioting, and I remember being like a kid, like, well, didn't they win? Like, why are they like destroying stuff? I didn't get it. And like now that I'm older, for some reason I understand why they're doing it, but I feel like I shouldn't.
And it's worse now. I think you have to be a complete idiot now to go out there and destroy shit. Is because everybody's filming everybody destroy shit, and then now all of a sudden your face is on the news, and you got to go to work the next day, and your boss saw you on the news like jumping off the hotel balcony. Cars.
I'm pretty sure I saw Nolan on the news. He was crying. He had like a Tom Brady jersey on and a hoodie, and he was just crying. And I felt bad for the guy. But he's not here to defend himself, so we'll never find out if that was him or not.
Did the local news interview him on like how sad he was about the loss of,
If they did, he should have given us a shout out,
For sure, man. For sure. At least he should have done that, right? But hey, man, it's kind of shitty when you're so used to winning that when you lose, it's just 10 times worse. But what can you do, man?
What you know about that, John?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know. I don't know nothing. My team is on the downfall. Hey, Max, what is your team? Or you don't watch football anymore?
Well, I mean, I still watch it, but I don't really have a allegiance to anybody.
Were you a Rams fan?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's a shitty situation.
Oh, fuck, the Rams.
Because I don't know if John, because they were in St. Louis and then they moved to LA and that whole thing.
Man, the Rams had some fucking good-ass teams, though, for a while.
Oh, yeah. Greatest show on turf.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I loved watching the Rams back then, even though they were in our little area. But I still love watching them play, man. Like they had the trio, right? The receivers. It was like Holt, and
Isaac Bruce.
Oh man.
Team.
Yeah. They had a Marshall Faulk was in there, right?
Yeah. Kurt Warner under center.
That was a good team to play with on Madden, because you could use like Falk, and Isaac Bruce. They were just so overpowered, basically.
They were like the New Jersey Nets of the NFL. Remember when the New Jersey Nets had like Kenyon Martin and Jason Kidd and what was his name? Richard Jefferson, and they were just flying around everywhere. It kind of reminded me of that, except for the Rams were just much better at what they were doing. And they won championships. Did they win Super Bowls?
They won one and they lost in one.
Still, man. Respect.
Still better than the Patriots.
Still respect to the Rams. All right, moving along. UFC 221. Romero versus Rockhold. Of course, Rockhold was supposed to fight for the real title against Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, unfortunately, had staph in his stomach, which is like fucking crazy. So Romero steps in. He gets a second chance. To me, it's like, man, I don't really like this matchup, to be honest with you. I don't think Romero should get a second chance because if he wins, then he fights the guy that beat him already, which is kind of fucked up, right? So, but anyways, we're going to talk about it. UFC in Australia. It's a big UFC pay-per-view. Before we get into the main event, which is for the interim title, let's go down and talk about the preliminary card, which, to be honest with you, this card is pretty good. Like, people are talking shit about it, but it's
I'm one of those people.
Are you? Because when I look at it, I see some fights, and I seen some fighters that are really good fighters and really good fights.
Separate out the main card and from the prelims.
Yeah, let's talk about
prelims.
prelims.
You would pay $65 for that.
Oh, for the main card?
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying I would pay money for it. I'm just saying it's a good card overall.
It's a good fight night. Yeah, it's a good fight night.
Yeah, it is. But luckily for me, I don't have to pay for it. That's the thing, you know.
Lucky bastard.
So let's go to the prelims. We'll start with you, Max. What matchup do you see as being the best matchup, possible fight of the night type, matchup?
All right, well, if we're talking fight of the night, I think you got to look at the preliminary card headliner between Damian Beatdown Brown and the maestro, Dong Hyun Kim. Both guys just go at it, come for war every time, and have had multiple fight of the nights already in their UFC careers. Perhaps the fighter I am most excited to watch is the middleweight, Israel Adesanya, making his UFC debut, and I hope I said that right. But very highly touted dimensional striker. I believe he trains at Tiger Muay Thai, and he faces Rob Wilkinson, who's a guy who also likes to come forward, has a lot of finishes on his record, so that should be quite the battle. But some decent prelim matchups too, and I won't take too much, but definitely Jeremy Kennedy, Alexander Volkanovski, both guys 3-0 in the UFC. And then ranked flyweights, Jussier Formiga, Ben Nguyen, should be a good one too.
Yeah, Israel, he actually fought for the Glory title. I watched that fight, very good fight, back and forth. He actually trains out of City Kickboxing with Daniel Hooker. I think Alex Volkanovski was down there for a couple weeks for his camp for this fight against Jeremy Kennedy. They're building a pretty good team down there in New Zealand. And he is a guy to watch out for, undefeated. Great fight for him. Rob Wilkinson, to be honest with you, I don't know really much about him. So I believe that Israel's just going to destroy this guy. I think that's what's going to happen, right? The most significant fight, I believe, that's on this preliminary card for the division that they're in is the Ben Nguyen versus Jussier Formiga fight. If Ben Nguyen goes in there, takes care of business like he should be. His next fight could be a title eliminator fight in that flyweight division. That's why it's so important for him. And even Jussier Formiga, if he wins, his next fight could be possibly a title eliminator fight, which is huge for both guys, right? Tone, what do you think? Like, I know you're gonna shit big bombs on this, but who's a fighter that you look at on this preliminary card and say, like, hey, this guy's pretty legit. Let's hype him up.
I mean, I think I would have to disagree with you a little bit that the Ben Nguyen, I mean, at least long-term wise in their division, that Ben Nguyen and Formiga is the highest level or is going to have the most longest lasting impact, because I think Volkanovski versus Kennedy, while it probably has no shot of being fight of the night and might be a very boring fight actually, stylistically for these two. These are both very young guys that have very bright futures at a division that's packed with talent. I think they're just going to add to it. And that's the fight that I would single out as that type of one. But Ben Wynn and Formiga, I too am looking forward to that a lot. I'm going to be rooting for Ben Wynn, but I think Formiga has the edge there. And then the one kind of floating under the radar, the old guys, or at least one old guy, and Ross Pearson, who really needs a win really bad, and Hirota.
Hirota's an old guy too.
Yeah, I didn't want to call him old, but yeah, the two old guys. You got a senior matchup here. Soft spot in my heart for guys like Ross Pearson who have been around forever, and just gamers. Came up through the old season of tough. Was that tough like U.S. versus U.K. or whatever?
Yeah, season 9, I believe.
And at this point, we've just lost count of how many fights in the UFC he's been in. It's a ton. It's a lot of fights.
John, I want to get your thoughts on the Teruto Ishihara and Jose Teco Quiñones.
Ishihara, I know that he has been down there. He actually went to Australia early to kind of get acclimated to the time zone in Australia. I believe that this fight, he will probably get it done, Ishihara. I think that this is a fight that he could kind of get back into his groove, because I don't know, if he doesn't win this fight, he's gone. I think he will get cut. I think that he's not really worth keeping around if he doesn't show development in his skills. And in his last few fights, he hasn't really shown that much development. Jose, I don't really know much about Jose. Jose's Jose. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, so Quiñones, also known as Teco, trains at Alliance. He was on the Ultimate Fighter Latino America Season 1, was the runner-up at bantamweight, but has won 3 straight since losing in the finale. Granted, he hasn't fought the toughest of competition, but this will definitely be his toughest fight yet, but he's no slouch, and he comes forward too. It depends on which Teruto Ishihara shows up, the one that we saw in his UFC debut against Julian Erosa, just let his hands go, or if it's that really hesitant, kind of lower fight IQ that we've seen in his last 2 fights against Gray Maynard and Rolando D. Which one shows up, but could go either way.
You're definitely right. It's a toss-up. If Ishihara wins, I believe he'll probably end up winning by decision. And if Jose wins, I think he could maybe tap out Ishihara, to be honest.
I don't want to shit on my hometown gym here, but I think John's right. If Ishihara doesn't get a win here, he should be gone, because this is lined up pretty well for him. Man, that loss to Lobov was just shocking to me.
It was.
That he got upset that bad, and then to double down on that and get upset by Gray Maynard, man, that's brutal. That's really brutal, and I hope he does bounce back. I think they're kind of setting him up a little bit to get that bounce back in his step, and coming off a win over Dai. Another favorable matchup in my opinion, even though respect for Jose and whatnot.
A guy that's actually kicking off the card, that is, to be honest with you, very good. He's under the radar. He's undefeated. He joined the UFC after he won the Pancrase welterweight title. In his 5th fight as a professional. He's 6-0 now. He beat the brawler Hyungyu Lim, the one from Korea, Korean top team. Daichi Abe. He's taking on Luke Jumo. I think that's how you say his name. Fuck, I'm so bad with names, man. But I think Daichi Abe, he's a guy that everybody should be looking out for in the welterweight division. He's a judo black belt, so he could go to the ground, he can scramble, and he has knockout power. I believe that this fight, even though Luke is a staple in Australia and New Zealand, I think Daichi Abe goes in there and makes a highlight out of Luke. So I'm going to let you guys know this. So the first fight is actually going to probably be pretty exciting. You know, a lot of people skip the first few fights, but I think that you should look out for this one.
I love this guy's nickname, Luke the Jedi. That's great.
And he's part Korean, so it's like I'm kind of conflicted, you know, that I have to say those things, but it is what it is, right? Daichi Abe, he's a beast. And
I would have never guessed that that's how you say. What do you say, Daichi Abe?
Abe, yeah.
I was gonna say something like Daki Abe.
Daki Abe, that's better. That's better. That's a better name.
I was gonna totally butcher his name if I said it.
You know, Daki Abe is just a better name. It just sounds, you know, like more professional for some reason. But yeah, in Japanese, that pronounces Abe. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. Okay, I'm gonna list off all the ones that are just like I think there's gonna be silly finishes on this prelim card. I think Daichi Abe, like I said just moments ago. I think Volkanovski, he will have a highlight reel finish in this fight. And Damian Brown versus, you know, Maestro Kim. One of those guys are going to get a highlight finish, I believe. I think they're just going to throw down. And I talked to Damian Brown like a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about he's very realistic in his position in the UFC. He says that, you know, he came into the league, or not the league, the UFC as a card filler, and he believes, hey, it's his job to kind of change the perception of him when he fights and to become, you know, like a top 10 guy. But he says that right now he's not that top 10 guy. Do you think that you can become a top 10 guy with the brawling style? Well, let's start with you, Tone.
Who are we talking about?
Damian Brown and even Maestro Kim.
That you can be
a brawler.
I mean, you could be a brawler, but that generally does not lead to, like, are you going to be the champion?
Even a top 10.
Oh, yeah, you could be top 10, but, I mean, you're never going to be the best if you're, you know, even guys who get labeled as brawlers, guys like Cody Garbrandt. I mean, look, there's so much more to his game than that. You know, the game plans him and his coaches put together and the way he executes them, you know, I don't think so.
Max, who do you think is the lock in the prelims? Like, you would throw money down on this. It's the lock.
Of the prelims, that's a tough call. I would have to go with Israel Adesanya, just because Rob Wilkinson is not, knowing his striking credentials, Rob Wilkinson's not a guy that's going to come in and look for a takedown. He's going to push the action on the feet. And just knowing the striking credentials of Adesanya could be another highlight reel finish there.
What about you, Tone? What is Tone's lock of the night?
Of the whole thing, or am I only allowed to pick from the prelims? I'll go with Ishihara.
Oh, shit.
I feel like I can't be nice. I don't know. I don't want to say anything more.
All right, let's move on.
At my gym, so I can't.
Right. Let's move on to the main card. Kicking it off, light heavyweights. Tyson Pedro versus Saparbek Safarov, which is a mouthful. Saparbek Safarov, he's been out for over a year. And in his last fight, he suffered his first loss. Tyson Pedro, same situation, but he hasn't been out for over a year. He's only been out for maybe a couple months. In his last fight, he took on, I think, Latifi and dropped a unanimous decision. which is not that, to be honest, not a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing he lost, but you know, to Latifi, who is a pretty legit guy. In this fight, who would you take, or who would you take? Who has who has more tools to win the fight, or who has the best tools to win the fight? We'll start with you, Max.
Just on paper, you got to think it's the advantage goes to Pedro. Safarov in his UFC debut, while he was definitely tough and took everything John Vellante had, he did not seem like his skills were on par with the rest of the upper echelon of the light heavyweight division. And Tyson Pedro, yes, he's coming off the loss to Ilir Latifi, but he was very competitive in that fight. Prior to that, had some stellar performances. Got to think he has the definitive advantage, and especially being in his home country, think he gets it done here.
Do you think he gets the finish?
Yeah, I'll say he gets the finish, and I'm going to go on a limb, and I know it's rare for the heavier weight classes, but I say he gets a submission.
Wow. What about you, Tone? What's your prediction of this light heavyweight matchup?
Yeah, I like the matchup for Pedro. This is a guy that they could definitely market. He's young, coming out of Australia in a division that desperately needs talent and names and just anything to build on. Light heavyweight is just a mess right now in the UFC. So they're, anything that they can take, they will. And Tyson Pedro, like Max said, very impressive in 2 fights before that loss, finishing Khalil Roundtree and Paul Craig. And can't take anything away from him. Tough decision, loss versus the TV. Not going to hold that against him. He comes out, beats Safarov, and, he's right back in the mix of things at a very, very shallow weight class.
What's your prediction?
Pedro's going to win.
But like what?
Flying scissor kick.
And he hits him with the calf.
Calf slicer. Yeah, calf slicer.
Calf slicer. All right.
I do like Max's prediction of a submission because I like his. I think he has a very strong grip. I think he demonstrated that against Roundtree when he got him in that chokehold. Man, he just clamped down.
I think Pedro, he's gonna pick him apart from distance, and Safarov's not gonna know what to do. And what's gonna happen is he's just gonna, pummel him and probably knock him down, and then just finish him with ground and pound, probably in the second round. Pedro, he seems like this loss has changed him a little bit. He's kind of went back to what he should be focusing on. To be honest with you, he's pretty well-rounded. If you've seen all of his fights coming up, it's not like he's just like doing one thing. He can do everything. And, training with Mark Hunt, training with the Tahuna brothers, training with another guy that's on the card, Tai Tuivasa. It's just, I think those guys down there, those big, massive motherfuckers down there are just making each other better. And Mark Hunt, he's just the leader of that group. Now, moving on, you got Jake Matthews, who is like the Sage Northcutt of Australia, versus Jin Liang Lee, who is the ugliest Chinese dude that I've ever seen in my life. But I think in this fight, in this matchup, Lee, I think he takes Matthews out easy and quick. I think Matthews is hyped. He's overhyped. He's a hype train. He's not that good. And putting him against Lee, I don't know. I think they just want him to, like, get cut or something. I just have this feeling in my mind. Lee's down there in Thailand. I think he trains at Phuket Top Team. So he's not that far away from where he's fighting. I think he just has more power. He has more skills. His scrambles are better. His wrestling's better. He takes him out early, first round. I think this will be a knockout too. What do you think, Max, on this matchup?
Well, Hats off to you, John, for the description of both Jake Matthews and Li Jingliang. That was pretty entertaining. I agree with you. Jingliang appears to have a definitive advantage. He has shown some heavy hands at 170 pounds. And keep in mind, Jake Matthews fought most of his career at lightweight, just recently came back up in his last fight against Bojan Velichkovic. Jingliang seems to really be coming into his own. You mentioned the Phuket Talk team. He's also been doing work at Extreme Couture. I don't know if he went there for this camp because realistically, I mean, he's closer to where he was training as is. But got to think Jingliang puts it on him and lands a big blow early on and puts him away.
What about you, Tone? You going with my Chinese connect?
I feel like we're agreeing too much on these fights. I almost want to like throw a curveball in there, but damn, like I have to agree. I mean, I think you could argue Jake Matthews is coming off of 3 losses. That Belichkovic fight, I didn't have him winning that one on the scorecards. And then the other 2 before that, before he moved back up, or he moved up to welterweight, weren't very good performances. But yeah, watching tape of the Leech, man, I just love that guy. And his game, seems to be developing still. And I just love the Muay Thai, the kicks, he's got some nasty leg kicks. The overhand right can really hurt somebody. The way he put out Nash was just nasty.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those, like, he hit him right on the button, and it took, Nash's body a little bit, or his brain a little bit of time to catch up with his body. He did a little like waver and crash to the canvas. And that was just beautiful. I'd love watching tape on Leech, man. He's an exciting fighter, and I think he gets the win here. And man, if he gets the win here, he's on 5-5 winning streak, and you got another good guy to watch at 170
for sure. The Leech, aka the Chinese Sonic the Hedgehog. But the Leech, I think he wants to fight Stun Gun in his next fight, because he's been calling out Stun Gun before even this matchup was announced. He wants to do the Korea versus China thing, and rumors are that they're going to have a card announced eventually in China or in Korea. So I could see that happening later this year if he wins this. Even if he doesn't win this, it could still happen. But I believe that he'll win this. The next fight, heavyweights. We all love the heavyweights. The next 2 fights are the heavyweights. The Tai Tuivasa, undefeated. I think he's the next big thing in the heavyweight division. I just believe that he has the tools. He's light on his feet. He has the striking. I think this matchup is perfect for him to kind of for us to gauge his kind of like ground or whatever, because Asker is if you watched him fight, it's not like you're gonna write home about his striking, right? It's like he's just gonna try to take you to the ground and hug you and stuff like that, right? So
lay and pray.
Yeah, lay and pray. Exactly. Back to John Fitch. He's Asker. It's hard to say anything good about him, man, because when you watch his fights, it's not like he's like an exciting heavyweight. He kind of reminds me of Jared Rosholt. Do you remember him?
Oh God.
He kind of reminds me of that
Why'd you have
style.
to bring that up?
Even though Jared Rosholt, he won fights in the UFC, they still cut him. They still released him. But I believe Tai Tuivasa, he finishes his fight fast, just like he did his last fight. Asker can't. He's not able to stand with him. What do you think, Max? Do you think Asker has a chance?
I wouldn't write Asker out entirely. I think he has some decent technique in transitions, but this seems, like you said, John, a tailor-made fight for Tai Tuivasa. He's younger, he's hungrier, he has the power, he's light on his feet, he moves well, he comes from a good training camp, has good training partners, and he's got the home crowd advantage, first round TKO.
Tone?
Yeah, I mean, I think he should win this, but I mean, with the guy that's not very proven, like two of us, I'm never too sure. We could definitely be surprised with Asker, pulling out a win here. Has the experience factor, um, and so it's a good fight to gauge where he's at. I agree with you. Where Bam Bam, is he ready for? I wouldn't even call him. He's not a veteran or anything, but just a guy who's been around, and not someone like Rashad Coulter. Um, so we'll see. We'll find that out, and I'm excited to find that out because I do think, at just 24 years old and training with these big dudes, with a good group of guys, and the size he presents and everything for the heavyweight division, I think it could be exciting, man. He's one of those guys who I think doesn't he cut weight to make 265.
Yeah, he used to be like, I think 50 pounds heavier than he is now.
See, I just love the guys, the real heavyweights. I don't. I'm sick of. I think that they're dying out. That breed of like heavyweights that fight around like 235, 240. Let's get back to having like the guys who are like pushing 300 pounds fight day.
Well, the co-main event is, of course, the legend Mark Hunt versus Curtis Blades. Now, before I say my piece on this fight, I would like to hear the in-depth analysis of my co-hosts. First, I'll go with Tone. What do you think about this matchup?
I hope we actually have some disagreement here because we've been agreeing on everything. But I think I don't. Odds haven't been released yet, have they?
I think Blades is a slight favorite. I think he's around 160.
Fuck. Okay, I was trying to pick an upset. No, I think Blades has got this. Hunt, while not really like showing signs of exactly, it's not like he's falling off a cliff or anything. Obviously coming off that win over Derek Lewis, mostly due to Derek Lewis just dying inside of the cage. But I mean, just kind of that steady erosion, I guess, of reflexes and just overall athleticism has definitely been apparent. And fighting someone like Curtis Blades, who could throw a lot of shit at you, and on top of that, take you down as well. I just think it's a bad matchup for Hunt, and I think. If Blades doesn't eat a classic, overhand from a Hunt, he'll be okay here.
Max?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if we have any disagreement, Tone.
God damn.
Hunt has time and time again shown he's susceptible to really powerful offensive wrestlers. Brock Lesnar and Stipe Miocic come to mind. And that's Curtis Blades' game. He's going to rush you and take you down. And he's shown some real solid top control, ground and pound. He's working at elevation. Got to think he will look to take Hunt down. And quite frankly, I think he's going to have that success and over again, going to go to the well and get a takedown. He'll avoid that big left hand. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Blades gets a late second round TKO.
We better disagree on this main event. There better be some disagreement.
I thought that you guys are all gonna pick Hunt. That's why I let you guys go first. But
God damn it.
But I also believe Blades is going to take this fight, and a lot of people are going to pick Hunt because they're nostalgic, I guess. But like you said, Max, totally agree. Blades has the perfect style, and he has the type of coaches that will guide him into doing what he needs to do to win. Not to, have a fight of the night, but to win, to catapult himself into that top 5, rankings or whatever you want to call it. Blades, very good wrestler. He has the cardio. Yeah. But I don't know if he's going to finish him. I think he gets the decision. I think he just grinds him out, lay and pray. That's the theme of this podcast today. Yeah, I think that's the end result. There's not much else really to talk about. Mark Hunt, he's been out for a while, to be honest with you, right? So yeah. I don't think that's going to be good for him. And he is getting up there in age. He is, I don't know how old he is. I think he's like 40 past. Is 43. He past 40? He's 43. Yeah, that's not a good age for a heavyweight. Let's move on to the main event. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to just pick Luke Rockhold to win this fight. I think Luke Rockhold, he just has the tools, the skills, the scrambles, and the wrestling. He has the defensive wrestling to hold off Romero. And Romero, yes, he's going to be wild and he's going to jump around and look like a Ninja Turtle. But I think Rockhold knocks him out, head kick, second round. He's the champ. What do you think, Max?
Man, I've gone back and forth on this fight. On paper, I'm going to give Rockhold the advantage, but just to shake things up here, Yoel Romero, he's been in those fights where, he just kind of dancing around, and then he lands the flying knee or he lands the big overhand left and just completely changes the dynamic. And I'm going to say that he has Rockhold's going to have a lot of success early, especially at those body kicks, but Romero's going to land one clean shot and then be able to put Rockhold on his back and ultimately finish him with a TKO third round.
Tone?
Yeah, I have to agree with Max that on paper, you give the advantage to Rockhold. The very diverse arsenal that he possesses, all the kicks, as well to go with just his, meat and bones kind of striking that he uses very well with the jab and using his distance, his length. He really takes advantage of that. But I said all that, but I still think I don't think Romero is capable of winning 3 rounds out of 5 rounds, if this went to a decision. But I think he's just got so much explosion in him. I'm not sure that – I think that the takedown, or at least the takedown attempts, will wear down Rockhold. And even when I think Romero's aware that he does not have the cardio, to match the output some of these guys have. But he'll save up, like, reserves and just burst out with, like, crazy shit. Even in the later rounds when he's more tired, he just has that extra gear, and he'll land some crazy flying shit, late in the round, and that's just what I see happening here. But I could totally see Rockhold taking a decision. If this was a 3-round fight, I'd be much more confident in Romero. But 5 rounds, is just kind of a toss up, and I'm going to go with the more exciting guy, in my opinion.
Man, this is going to be a good fight, though. I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be tense from the start.
It's better than – honestly, I think it's better than not better, at least in terms of the title picture, because now we have a whole nother fucking interim belt. But I thought Whitaker was just going to roll over Rockhold, so at least we have, like, a competitive matchup here.
No, I completely disagree with that. I thought that the Rockhold versus Whitaker fight could be more competitive than this fight. I see that Rockhold beats Romero. He fights Whitaker, and that fight will probably be a very competitive fight. I don't know who actually wins that fight, but I think it will be exciting because both of those guys are not going to go for takedowns, and they're going to stand and trade. And I don't know what's going to happen because you got Rockhold with his, like, hyena style. Not Rockhold, what is it? Whitaker with his hyena. He looks like a hyena for some reason when he's fighting, right? Because his hands are all limp and shit. And then you got Rockhold. He's more of a traditional striker. I think that's going to be a good fight. But going back to this fight, yeah. It's what time does it start over there?
This is normal time for Americans. They're having it
The
at in the
Sunday
morning or whatever in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, also another thing before we go is that they're not having the early weigh-ins on this for this card. Did you know this?
No.
I
Yes.
did not know that.
They just announced that they are not having the early weigh-ins. They're having just the weigh-ins 24 hours before the fights.
What was the reasoning for that?
They have not said what was the reasoning. They just announced that this was what's going to happen. I think Australia, when the UFC goes to Australia,
Because
there's
it's in
no
the morning?
commission, is there? I think the UFC controls or they commission
Well, yeah, they
themselves.
have their own commission set up, but that must be because it's in the morning, right?
I think so. I think so.
Man, the fact that it's in the morning might lead to some very wonky shit going down fight night.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, we might see some weird stuff.
Some weird
You got
like
you got
people
guys
winning.
you got guys on serious. Well, it sounds like most of them got out there early though, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of them got out there early.
So, because you don't want to deal with that jet lag, and then you're fighting in the morning and not at night. That's got to throw people off. That's
Yeah,
a tough situation.
yeah, because I know Kim. He went out there on Sunday, which is basically a week before.
Man, I'd want like having dealt with jet lag just from here to England. Man, I'd want at least like 2 weeks.
But the thing is,
Jet
Kim, he's
lag's a
flying
bitch.
from Korea to Australia, which is only like
Oh, no,
2 hour
yeah,
difference, right?
okay,
So
yeah,
if
yeah.
it's 2 hour difference, he's going there a week before. That means
I was thinking about the Americans. Like,
there. To be honest with you, there's not many Americans on this card.
no, you're probably right. There's no Americans on
There's
here.
Jose is on this
Oh,
card. He
Rockhold.
trains. Rockhold's American, of course, but
Ben
he
Wynn.
probably went out there. Blades is
Eric
American.
Blades.
But other than that, like a lot of the other guys are flying from all over the world. We'll see like how many Australians or New Zealand fighters win on this card. Like in the Brazil card where most
Like
of
if
them
the
won.
locals have a huge advantage.
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
thought last time they were there and Belakovic won that split. I thought it was a terrible decision.
Yeah,
That was a close fight.
I'm pretty sure those same judges are going to be in Australia.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, yeah. Max, do you think this card is a prime example of how the UFC is very thin?
Yes and no. It makes sense to completely stack, all your local guys on this card, and I don't necessarily think any of those Australian fighters are on the roster just because they're Australian. Maybe they have a little bit longer leash is when it comes to losses, but no, not necessarily. I think you could create a similar card anywhere in the world by having the local guys and then bringing in guys from other countries that aren't necessarily as known.
All right. Well, with that, I gotta bounce, man. I gotta go.
Plug it down.